Welcome to this edition of CorpDev.Ninja, the day before T-Day, Turkey Day. We've got a great, as always, a super special guest here today. And it is November 25th, 2020. Hello, Veronica. How are you doing?
I'm great. That's good music, Andreas.
You like
Good
it?
startup music. Yeah, I was dancing.
So we've got Veronica Juarez joining us for a 25-minute quick live session of all the amazing stuff she's been up to. We'll get into her story in a minute. She's currently the VP at Lyft and a scout at Lightspeed Venture Partners. We're lucky to have her today. She's got some exciting news to share. And I think you are quarantining in West Hollywood. Is that correct, Veronica?
Yes, I just moved to LA a couple of months ago from San Francisco. Really happy to be here and happy to be in a city with so many close friends like yourself.
We're right down the corner from each other. So you moved from San Francisco. That was a recent thing, right?
No, definitely.
And how are you? How are you enjoying your experience here versus in San Francisco? And I've also lived in the Bay Area, but a lot of people have decided to leave either the Bay Area or California altogether. To be quite frank, I've seen that as a pretty big trend, especially obviously given COVID. But why did you choose LA? And how's your quarantine going?
Yeah, so one of the things I've tried to do more during COVID is spend just a lot more time outside and in nature. And so even when I was still in San Francisco, I started hiking more than I normally have. My hiking boots have gotten a lot more use. And actually, I've started exploring hiking here in LA, which has been really nice because it's an adjustment to live with so many cars. So, being able to spend so much time outside and the views of the water has been really nice, and I'm quite grateful for it.
So, favorite hiking trails around here? Where's your go-to?
I don't have a go-to yet. Every time I go, I'm going somewhere new.
Got it. Are you using an app as well? Are you using All Trails, for example?
I love All Trails. I think All Trails is such a great app. Yeah.
Shout out to my boy Russell Cook, who created it.
Absolutely. And I really depended on All Trails in the Bay. Right now, I'm dependent on my friends. So I make plans with friends here and then ask them to pick a trail. And so I'm finding out where they want to go. But any trail that has a view of the ocean is pretty nice. I was just on one this morning.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's why hiking in Malibu or Santa Monica is particularly nice. Folks are really lucky to live down here and take advantage of that. So can totally see that. I'm going to give you a quick bio for the folks that are watching and for folks who will be listening later on Spotify and on iTunes, and we'll get into the questions. I always say meat and potatoes, but I think I overused that expression, so I decided.
Maybe you should be like turkey and stuffing.
Oh yeah, you're right. We're going to get into the. Oh, that was witty. I can't believe I didn't think about that. We're kind of getting into turkey and stuffing. Veronica Juarez is the VP of Social Enterprise and Government at Lyft. She's also a Lightspeed Venture Partners Scout looking to invest in companies that address societal inequalities and underrepresented founders/operators. Veronica is a fifth-generation Mexican-American from Houston. I don't know if I have to say Texas because people naturally assume it's Houston is in Texas, but I'll say Houston, Texas, since I wrote it here in my notes. And a first-generation college student from Stanford University. That is pretty damn impressive. Veronica is passionate about creating access and opportunity for low-income and vulnerable communities. She serves on the board of MACLA, a contemporary Latino arts organization, and is an advisor for Vamos Ventures, a VC fund that supports Latinx entrepreneurs. Veronica enjoys traveling, the outdoors. I guess we learned how much you like the outdoors given the hiking discussion just moments before, and breaking bread with family and friends. Veronica is a proud native Houstonian. Is that right? Did I say that wrong?
Houstonian. Nope, that's right.
Okay. I was like, caught me for a twist there. Home of the family's infamous taqueria and Via Arcos. She is a graduate of Phillips Exeter Academy and Stanford and resides currently today in West Hollywood, California. So tell me, Veronica, what folks don't realize is you're one of the very first Lyft employees from the beginning. And remarkably, you were actually, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, you got the mustache. Did it, was that given to you for the IPO or during or before? Like, when did you receive that pink mustache?
Shout out to my buddy Ethan Eiler, who developed the car stash originally. And actually, on my 7th year anniversary, I hit him up and said, "Hey, it's been 7 years. You think I could get one of these?" And he sent it to me actually a few months ago, and I just had it framed for the new office. But it's so fun.
That's awesome. I love that, and it's super iconic. I still wish there was those giant, furry, fluffy mustaches sometimes on cars. But when it lasted, it was pretty funny, and I love that it's on your wall. So tell me, Veronica, how did you become Lyft's first government relations employee? So not only were you one of the first employees at Lyft, but remarkably, which is one of the most important roles for Lyft or Uber or this, back in the day when rideshare was coming about, the biggest problems or the biggest obstacles and perhaps one of the most important things for the company, aside from business model and financing, is really government relations. So how did you become the first government relations employee? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I actually spent my whole career prior to Lyft working in politics. So I worked for politicians at the state, local, and federal level. And, I was raised in a family in which we still believe that government can be an agent for change and progress and justice. So, I knew I was going to spend time working in politics, but there came a time in my career that I was ready to transition to the private sector. And I just started looking, I was living in Houston at the time. And I started looking at roles in the Bay Area for tech companies or other private companies.
Why did you choose the Bay Area and tech? So you're in Houston, you're working government. Why were you like, hey, tech sounds interesting, Bay Area sounds interesting? Like, why did you do
that? Well, having gone to Stanford, I developed a dream to one day live, work, and make it in San Francisco. And part of the reason for that was when my friends and I would spend time in the city, and we would go out, I noticed that there weren't a lot of young professionals of color in the city. And I asked some groups of people that I met, and they all told me the same thing. Yep, there's really not a lot of us here. And so it became a North Star for me to move back and make it. And then a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should work in tech. You'll probably do really well in tech." And I had never considered a position in tech. So when I was applying to roles, the Lyft's job description just really spoke to me. It was like, be a pioneer and start something new and
did you go online? How did you find that?
Yeah, it was a job aggregator site, like
so
Simply Jobs, I think.
Oh wow!
Yeah, Simply Jobs, and it spoke to me. And when I read it, I thought, oh my God, this describes something I want to do, like be a pioneer. But I didn't know what Lyft was because at the time we were only in 3 cities. So it recently launched. And, just to tell the whole story, I mean, actually a friend of mine was connected to somebody who was at the company and put in a great word. And so they, looked at my resume and they gave me an interview, which just proves your network can be very powerful. Totally. So yeah. While I was still interviewing, I moved to San Francisco to demonstrate how serious I was, about applying for the job. I didn't apply for any other jobs because I wanted all of my energy to go into this one job. And I was just, I was just really excited about the prospect for developing something new that would really change millions of people's lives.
Well, that was a great bet. And, it's definitely paid off. So hats off to you. What was one of the very first assignments? So you moved to San Francisco. Were you working on policy domestically, or was it first focused in California, or was it San Francisco? You don't have to go into great detail, but what was one of the very first projects you were put on the spot? Because that's pretty interesting to go from academia, from college to then going into working in as a public servant and working in politics to then a private company. I'm just interested. What was the first kind of main project you worked on?
Yeah, and I just want to underscore, I had never worked for a private company before. I'd never worked in tech. I had never worked in the Valley. So it was a huge, eye-opening experience. I mean, when I started working at Lyft, we were in a garage, a converted garage that had one bathroom for all of us. And I did half of my calls on the dumpster, like behind the office, because there just wasn't enough room for all of us. So like you touched on before, I mean,
awesome.
The regulatory structure did not address ride sharing, right? All the transportation laws that existed outside of our industry, because our industry was developed post those regulations, having been taken into account. So right. My job and what my team did, for 2 years, helped build the entire team and structure across the country, was to really be the first people on the ground to meet with policymakers, regulators, explain what we were trying to do with the ride sharing movement, and with the community of drivers, and providing transportation access for people that need it the most. And then working through those conversations and negotiations with them. One thing I think it's important to understand is there is always going to be a natural tension between innovation, which is where tech really falls, and government structures, right?
Sure.
There's a natural tension there. And so what my role was really to navigate that tension, and be very clear with everyone we spoke to that even though we fell outside of current regulations, we would always stay at the table and work through new solutions. And I'm very proud of the work that we did and the work that we continue to do.
Amazing. And that's a nice segue to fast forward from, and how long have you been at the company now? You said 7.5 years. 7.5 years?
Yeah.
The mustache 6 months ago, and that was on your 7th month.
Yeah.
So, fast forward from that first assignment, big news, especially this week. If I'm not mistaken, on Monday, you've been quoted on the internet, and Lyft's been all over for actually Lyft and Uber. There was a huge recent government deal that was just announced, and you were responsible for that and managing that. Of course, that size deal is a company effort and many folks involved, but that was your baby for a long time. So can you tell folks a little bit about that U.S. government deal? You went from trying to figure out how to work with the government, and now you've sold the government to being a customer or a client of Lyft and actually Uber as well. So both of you guys, hats off to both of you. Tell me about that deal.
Absolutely. So one important thing to remember is the federal government is the largest employer in the world. So they have 4.1 employees. And this contract allows us to provide our platform and transportation services to the entire federal government, so every federal agency. And it's with the main agency called the General Services Administration. So it was a 4-year process for us, and me and my team were leading it for the last couple of years. I can't underscore really what a Herculean effort it is to pull this off and to become
triple black belt, grade A ninja move. Yeah, 4 years in the making.
Yes, absolutely. Because as I said, regulations didn't account for ride sharing when our services were first launched. So, we had to follow that through every system. But it's a really exciting place to be for us to now be at the point that we can work in concert with the federal government in this way.
So what does that mean, that the government will pay for some of their employees to use Lyft, or before they were like, hey, you can't even use it even as a private citizen? What exactly is the
For sure.
mechanics?
For sure. So the federal government spends $200 million annually on ground transportation for employees only. And whereas employees may have used ride sharing services before, it wasn't inside of a contract. So inside of a contract, we can actually launch programs with each individual agency, and manage spend and drive savings and give a lot more data to the government for their aggregate spend that they're spending, on the platform. So there's so much more that we can do. I would say that's step one. Step two, what I'm really excited about is that the ability for us to work with the federal government will now allow us to work with them for multiple use cases. So employee travel is one, but we have a huge commitment to our transportation access programs, like providing rides to and from people to get to job interviews, for people to get to healthy grocery stores, medical appointments, bike share programs, civic access, disaster relief. So those lift up access pillars for us are so important. And I was really bullish on this contract, and I'm really excited about it because it'll give us the opportunity to provide transportation access to millions of low-income people, millions of vulnerable community members that really need a ride to access a better quality of life. So that is, that makes me quite happy about the news.
Amazing. Congratulations for all that success. And that's a feat unto itself. So we'll switch over to a couple other topics in a moment. But before I do, from a corporate development perspective, because CorpDev.Ninja, we talk about all many things in business and even non-business. But the common thread is corp dev. And for me, you're the first person that, not the first person, but one of the very first folks I'll ask this question regarding when you think about doing deals, what's the, at a government level versus a private level, what's the one piece of advice you might give to folks in private companies when dealing with government? What's the main nuance in order to be successful in working with the U.S. government, at least?
Sure. My piece of advice would be, in working with government in general, you really want to have someone or multiple people on your teams who have worked in government before. So having that basis of understanding, being able to speak the same language, understanding. Why
is that DNA important?
Because having spent, the bulk of my, I guess half of my career in government, it's different, right? The experience is different. When you work in government, what you are managing on behalf of constituents and their concerns and, political pressures and budget and whatever else is going on, like you only know what that is like if you have that experience, right? And that is a very different way of work life and a very different reality than working in a private company. And so, I think that is just extremely important to have the perspective of, yes, I know what you have to deal with day in and day out and what you're managing on behalf of, United States citizens and residents.
So there's an element of like human empathy that can actually, that pays a lot of dividends, so to speak, when working with the government. And therefore, when getting a deal done, government, to get a deal done, it might be easier to get things through, and people are more willing to work with you because they know that what it's like to be in their shoes and how to kind of follow the process, but without possibly bulldozing. Because I know in private companies, and part of the work that I do is a lot of corporate development that companies hire me to help them advise on, and oftentimes I can be very, very forward and appear aggressive and how I get, but I'm very efficient in getting things done. And sometimes there's collateral damage to that. But in government, what I'm hearing from you is that that sort of kind of process or way may not be the most effective way. And it really stems from maybe taking the process toll of how you've done it in the past and applying that. So when working with government, having a team of folks who've done it before, it will lead to a better, could lead to a more successful and efficient outcome.
Absolutely. Having that perspective.
Got it.
Yeah, having that perspective and being able to cooperate, in that way.
Cool. Awesome. So a few other questions. Tell me what you're up to at Lightspeed Venture Partners.
Yeah. So I recently started as a scout with the firm, which means that I am looking to make seed investments with different companies along on behalf of the firm. And the areas that I'm interested in, like you said before, are companies that are addressing societal inequities and
Mhm.
underrepresented founders or founding teams. So it's, a great new challenge, but a way for me to really bring my commitment to working on behalf of vulnerable communities into the venture space.
Awesome. So given that context you gave me, I know you've been there for a little while. My understanding is there was, I think, in TechCrunch, a recent announcement about a deal that you or a seed investment that Lightspeed that you guys worked on. Tell me about that
Yeah.
investment. What was your first one?
Absolutely. So I got us into an oversubscribed round for a company called ShearShare. They are a Texas-based company, and it's a B2B marketplace for hairstylists and barbers to rent salon space by the day. So as you can imagine, a hairstylist or barber has a lot of overhead if they have to have their own shop, especially when you think about a time like COVID when everything is so unpredictable in terms of openings. And so this couple, a Black couple from Dallas, who had a career in the space, they started this company and it's doing really well. I will say beyond it meeting all of our revenue growth metrics that we look for, personally, I was interested in investing with the company because I grew up going to my aunt's, barber shop in
Mm-hmm.
Second Ward in Houston, and I would help her count money and pick up, hair and clean the salon. And I also saw her, really struggle to make ends meet, as she was running this very small business. And so I'm excited to see, this company really grow and thrive to
Mm-hmm.
help people like my aunt.
Got it. No, that's great. So your whole thesis around Lightspeed and the Scout program, especially for you, is around the social impact aspect of that, and underrepresented kind of groups that who are entrepreneurs or operators. You said it was shared. I'm sorry. What was the
Share,
share?
like,
Yeah,
shears,
like cheers. Um,
share,
awesome.
like what you don't do with food with me, share.
That's good. I don't share food with anyone. Uh,
Me neither. Got yelled at about
so
that.
can you tell me a little bit about some other areas, I mean, that you might be looking out for over the next the term of this program?
Yeah,
Like any other
absolutely.
particular, because some folks will want to know, probably, who are listening, may have some interesting deal flow for you. But what is it that if there are two areas that you'd like to drill or get a little deeper in, whether it's consumer or B2B SaaS or a particular sector or industry,
Hmm.
what is that? Or
Yeah.
are you completely
And
opportunistic at this point in learning
no,
about
no,
what?
no. And I want to separate the two. So it's companies that address societal inequities or underrepresented founders.
Got it.
So it doesn't have to be both,
Got
Um, one thing that I think about a lot is access and opportunity. So when we think about low income or vulnerable communities, like what is keeping them from having the same kind of access and opportunity that you and me
Right.
have? And that can take shape in a number of ways. It's part of the reason that I joined Lyft, and I love Lyft because you need a ride to get to your job or your healthcare appointment or
Right.
childcare or your education, right? Like transportation is one of those, main factors for you to be able to access a different quality of life. But there's so many other barriers, and so anything that can address what is keeping somebody from really enjoying and in their whole quality of life is huge. I mean, one thing I am interested in diving more into is really financial equity
Mm.
and the underbanked and the unbanked. And, because I was having a conversation with an entrepreneur the other day, Alex from Journey, and we were talking about digital ID and how 1 billion people in this world do not have any kind of identification. And if you don't have identification, you can't access services. You can't access, healthcare. I mean, there's so many things that you can't access because you don't have an ID. And so I think that question, I leave it broad because I really do want to be open to different people's interpretation of how they can improve the world for people that really need it the most.
Love that. Amazing. Well, I have a few relevant opportunities that I'm either invested in or currently looking at that I will share with you subsequent to the show.
You have the best deal flow, Andreas.
That's my middle name, Andreas Deal Flow Penna.
Corp Dev Ninja.
So tell me, we're going to wrap up in a minute, but what are you up to next?
Already? I thought we were just getting started.
So what's next for Veronica? What's the next step?
Absolutely.
Or is there a next step? I'm being presumptuous.
Yeah. No, there's always, there's always something to grow into. I mean, one, I am really interested in investing more, both with Lightspeed and with Vamos Ventures. With Vamos, we are only looking at Latinx entrepreneurs. Again, the issue of access and opportunity. So I'm absolutely looking for opportunities that were founded by Latino entrepreneurs. Secondly, I'm standing up my brand called Arturo Advisory. That's named after my father, and it's really built on the premise that
gentleman, by the way.
Also
really?
A big fan of Andreas. But the advisory is built on the premise that you can both create positive social change and drive high returns. We've proven that, at Lyft. We're going to prove that through our work with the federal government. And there's so many other examples of ways you can bring social enterprise work to life. And third, I would say, as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement that we saw build a lot of momentum over the summer, I started writing what's the beginning of a book called Unafraid. I don't know if whoever publishes it will let me keep that title, but I'd love to write more, and I'd love to put, some of my experiences together in the hopes that it could help or inspire or support other young women of color as well. Awesome.
Well, when you're at a stage to share the draft, I'd love to take a read or a pass of it. Final few closing questions. We're at the tail end of the show. I love asking people this. So what are the activities? Well, actually, no, it doesn't apply because I was going to ask you, how are you staying fit during COVID? And we talked about at the beginning, hiking. So second question going on. Are you cooking more at home, or are you getting food delivery? What's your kind of go-to routine here? And LA has fantastic and amazing restaurants, although it's been kind of going on and off, and you can only eat it outdoors. But I guess they just mandated where they're closing again. So how are you feeling during these times?
Well, yesterday, I'm so glad you asked me this today, because yesterday I made chicken caldo in my crock pot for me and my friend. It was so good. I'm gonna start using this crock pot more, but I'm trying to cook as much as I can. I really enjoy cooking. And you're right, LA just has really great food. So there's never, you're never short of options.
Yeah. Well, there we are at the end of our show. Thank you, Veronica Juarez. Again, great having you. What an awesome, prolific story from where you started from and how you were able to identify Lyft and really transform Lyft from a government relations perspective, and now growing into into becoming I know you'll be a prolific investor. So you're just planting the seeds right now with seed investing. So the pun was intended. So awesome.
Well, that means a lot coming from you, Andreas. I am really happy to be on your show, especially amongst, the impressive guests that you've had on here. And, I think it speaks a lot to you that you've had so many amazing business leaders and entrepreneurs here that are really willing to share their stories on their life's work. So super happy to be included as well.
Thank you for that. Thanks a lot. That means a lot, Veronica. End of the show. Again, corpdev.ninja. I had to take a little bit of a break since the last show. Just a lot of things going on, but generally every week, Thursday or Friday, 25 to 30 minutes live streaming on LinkedIn Live and subsequently posted on YouTube, as well as my website, published on Spotify and on iTunes. So looking forward to seeing folks in the next few episodes. We have some great guests coming up. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Veronica.
Awesome.
And have a good, safe tea day.
Thanks, you too.